Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Passover Buñuelos, Matzah Fritters. Yes, they are Passover friendly. They are delicious fritters that are very typical Sephardic-Turkish, and we eat them every single year. They cannot be missing from our Seder tables. And of course, they are excellent during the week at any time as a little snack or for breakfast. And the interesting thing is we serve these with sugar, but we eat them before our meal. We actually don't eat them as a dessert. We just serve these. Everybody is waiting for them after we've done our Seder, and then we dip them into our sugar and we enjoy them. And then we proceed with our Passover dinner. So these are amazing. You are going to love them, and you are not going to believe how easy they are to make. So let's not wait another second, and let's get started. For today's recipe, you will need 6 whole matzahs, 3 large eggs, 2 or 3 pinches of salt, some safflower oil for frying, and some sugar for dipping. You will also need a plate and some paper towel, a bowl and a fork to beat your eggs, a large bowl to make your mixture, a pot for frying, a fork such as a serving fork and a spider for when you fry, a serving spoon, and a ladle. And I'm going to be using a square Pyrex, but you can use any baking dish that will hold a whole matzah. The first thing I like to do is prepare a working station. I have a square pan with some water, and I have a small bowl where I've added some salt. I have my 3 eggs that I'm going to be beating, and I have my large bowl where I'm going to make my mixture. And of course, I have my matzahs, which are very important, and a serving spoon to help me mix everything together. So our first step is to crack our 3 eggs into a bowl, and then we are going to beat them well using a fork. Now, once your eggs are well beaten, then you're just going to set that bowl aside for a moment. Now, take 6 whole pieces of matzah out of your box and set them down on your counter, and you want to have your water ready, and of course the bowl where you're going to put in the moistened matzah. We're going to take the matzah, moisten it in the water, and then add them to the bowl. So I'm going to show you the process. What you do is you just take a matzah. I'm going to start with one at a time just to show you, and then you just dunk it in the water. I've actually even done this right in the sink and just have the water run over my matzah, but you can do that once you have a little more experience and you know how wet you want your matzah. So what I do is I just dunk it for a little bit and I turn it over a few times because I want to make sure that I'm moistening the matzah. Now, I don't want the matzah falling to pieces. I just want it slightly moist. So really it should just take a minute or two, and it's okay if the matzah breaks, or even if you want to break it, if you don't have a bowl the right size, it does not have to stay whole. But I just find this method pretty easy. Just soak it for a minute or two and turn it over a few times, and then you're going to start to notice that it becomes softened. I'm gently testing the matzah to see if it's pliable. When it starts to feel like I can almost bend it, then it's soaked up enough water, because we don't want a complete mush. We just want the matzah to be moist and to have absorbed some water, which if you're doing 1 piece of matzah at a time, shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. So once you're comfortable that your matzah has absorbed some water, then we are going to start breaking the matzah up into small pieces. And then we are going to add those small pieces into our bowl. Now, I will mention that some people use matzah farfel to make their buñuelos, which is totally fine. But I like the crispy edges that you get from the full sheets of matzah. But that is a personal choice. So if you prefer to work with farfel, that's fine too. So notice how I just break the pieces up and give them another dunk. And then when I feel that they're somewhat pliable, then I start to break them into small pieces. I just want to make sure that they've absorbed enough water, but not so much water that they are just breaking completely down and getting mushy. And then I just go piece by piece and I just break it and add it to my bowl. And notice that I'm just creating these small pieces of matzah to make sure that they're not any huge chunks. They should just be small pieces like the ones that I am showing you here. If you find any larger pieces, then of course, break them up as you go along. Now just continue to do this process over and over until you've dunked all of your matzahs and you've broken them up into small pieces like the ones I have now in the bowl. Now, I did one sheet. I'm going to do one more just to show you, and then I'm just going to move to 2 at a time, because once you get comfortable with how much water needs to be absorbed and how your matzah should feel when it's ready to be broken up into pieces, then you can do as many at a time as you're comfortable with. I've actually used a big bowl and put all 6 pieces of matzah in there and then let it absorb some water and then start breaking them up, or you can do 2 or 3 pieces at a time, whatever you are comfortable with. And like I said, you can even just do this right next to your sink and have the water running and just wet your matzahs that way. Really, it's just about getting comfortable with how much water you want your matzah to absorb. But if you do it this way, then you know that about 3 minutes should do it. Just flip your matzah every so often and then just test it to see when it's becoming slightly pliable. And that's when you know it's ready to be broken up into pieces. Now, if you're using a Pyrex or a bowl to soften your matzah, then I suggest you just change your water after doing 2 slices of matzah, because I just like to work with clean, clear water. And of course, there's going to be some residue left after you work with a couple of slices. So that's probably a good time to change your water and use clean water. Now I'm just repeating the process over and over. I'm now going to be doing 2 sheets at a time. Now that you know what you are doing, you might be comfortable with working with 2 pieces of matzah at a time. But if you're not, then just do 1 at a time until you go through all 6 pieces of matzah. That's totally fine. And then of course, since I did 2 pieces at once, I'm going to change my water 1 more time to have clean water to work with on my last 2 pieces of matzah. Now, 6 pieces of matzah will render about a dozen buñuelos. So of course, you can multiply this recipe out depending on how many buñuelos you want to make. And in my house, a dozen goes way too quickly. So I usually do at least 2, 3, 4 times as much, and even more if you're having guests, because everyone is going to want to have these. They're really, really that delicious. So now that you've soaked all of your matzah and you've broken it up into pieces and added it to your bowl, all you want to do is check the bottom of the bowl to make sure that there's not any excess water, that you haven't oversaturated your pieces. But if there is any excess water at the bottom, then do not worry. You would just take your bowl over to your sink and then just spill off any water that has accumulated at the bottom of the bowl. So now bring over your eggs and your salt, because now we are going to add them to this matzah that we have prepared. And so I just give my egg just a little bit of a swirl with my fork, and then I add it to the moistened matzah. And then of course I bring over my salt and I just add a few pinches. Really, you just do this to taste. So 2 or 3 pinches is usually enough, because we of course want to accentuate the flavor, but we are going to be serving these with sugar. So we don't want them too salty. Just 2 or 3 pinches of salt is perfect. So now grab your spoon and we are just going to stir all of these ingredients together. I am not mushing them. I'm just using my spoon to kind of bring the mixture over onto itself and just make sure that that egg has really just incorporated itself really well amongst the mixture, because the egg is what's going to help these fritters puff up when they fry. So the egg really is the only thing that will bring this matzah together and also help make them golden and puffy when they fry. So it is really important that it is well incorporated in the mixture. And of course, the moisture from wetting the matzah together with the egg is what is going to give it that perfect texture. It's going to be crispy on the outside, but kind of soft on the inside, and it is just the perfect bite. So now that our egg and salt have been well incorporated, it's time to cover our mixture, and we are going to let our mixture sit for about 10 minutes or so, which is actually perfect because that's about how long it's going to take to warm our oil. So just cover your bowl with a kitchen towel or some plastic, and then you can move over to your pot and you can add your oil to it, because while your oil heats, then your mixture will sit and it will be ready to fry once your oil is hot. So you want to add a good 2 or 3 inches of oil so that you are sure to have enough oil for your buñuelos to fry up crispy and to float as they fry. So I like to set my temperature to a medium high, because that way it'll take about 10 minutes for your 2 or 3 inches of oil to heat up perfectly and be ready for your buñuelos. So after you've let your buñuelos sit for 10 minutes and your oil has been heating, they are ready to fry. So bring over your spoon and your ladle, and of course your plate that you have lined with paper towel, because you want to rest your buñuelos on that to absorb your excess oil. And then of course you want your bowl with your mixture near your oil and your plate, and you want your spider and your fork to help you with your frying. The first thing you want to do is test your oil to make sure it is hot enough. So what I do is I just drop in a tiny bit of my buñuelo mixture, and I make sure that it starts to sizzle up really quickly and immediately starts to float. And if it does, then you know that your oil is ready to go. So to shape my buñuelos, I use a serving spoon and a small ladle. So what I do is I scoop some of the mixture up onto my ladle, and then I use my serving spoon to just help me add some mixture onto the ladle. And I also use it to scrape off any excess and to just shape in it a bit and make sure that it's got sort of a mound shape to it, because then we will get our traditional buñuelo shape, which really is sort of round, but each one will take on its own character and its own shape. And then I just gently come over to the oil and I use the serving spoon to help me remove the mixture off of the ladle, and I just gently drop it into the hot oil. So I just come right over and I use the spoon and help me drop my buñuelos into the oil, of course, very carefully and very gently. Just get close to the edge of the oil so that you don't make a splatter. And then what you want to do is just repeat this a few times in order to get a few into your pot. Now, I am going to be frying 4 buñuelos at a time because the diameter of my pot is not that wide, and I don't want to overcrowd my pot because I don't want the temperature of my oil dropping while it is frying. So for this pot, 4 is perfect. And you see how they each take on their own shape? That's perfect. They have their crispy edges, but the inside is still going to be fluffy and airy and delicious. And don't worry if you have any small little pieces that fall off of your buñuelo, because those are actually delicious. And in my house, they are considered samples. Everyone wants to come by and grab a piece. So then, of course, repeat the process over again to fry your next 4 buñuelos, or as many as you can comfortably fit in your pot. Of course, when I'm making a much bigger batch, then I use a much larger pot because I want to be able to get more in. But since I'm only frying up a dozen, I'm doing 4 at a time, 3 batches. They fry up super quick, and before you know it, we are done frying. Of course, I've been using my spoon and my ladle to drop in my buñuelos, but I use my serving fork to help me turn them over. And sometimes they will fight you and they'll just want to pop right back to their original position. And you can then use your spider to remove them from the hot oil. And of course, those delicious little pieces can come out with your spider very easily. And just continue to use your spider and fork as needed to help you turn these over while they're cooking. They shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes on each side, but you will notice that they are nice and golden when they are ready. Once they've gotten that beautiful golden color on both sides, then that's when they are ready to be pulled out of the hot oil. Now batch number 3 is almost ready to come out. They're looking beautiful and golden, and you see how I just gently flip them over as they cook because I want to make sure that they're golden on both sides. And once they are, I just pull them out and I put them on my plate that is lined with paper towel, and there I will have my 12 buñuelos. Of course, the amount of buñuelos you get may vary depending on the size that you made, but you should get somewhere around 12. So once they're all fried up, just turn off your stove and your buñuelos are ready. And look at how beautiful they look. They're just so crispy and golden on the outside, but the inside is still somewhat moist. It's just an incredible, incredible dish. And those crispy little pieces are extra delicious and extra crispy, and everybody will love them. So in my family, we serve these with just regular white sugar. And I'm going to show you in a minute how we eat them, but there are other ways of serving them. Some people like to prepare a syrup for them, or some people like to use powdered sugar, but the traditional Sephardic-Turkish way is to just serve them hot and delicious with a side of white sugar and dip them into that delicious sugar. So enough with the observing, it's now time to taste one. And of course, you'll notice that I served myself a couple of those crispy little pieces because that is everyone's favorite part. And then I'm just gonna grab this one because it's looking beautiful and golden and just nice and plump. And then just serve some sugar right on your plate. So what we usually do is we just serve a little mound of sugar on the plate, and then what we do is we dip our buñuelo into the sugar. But since the inside of the buñuelo is softer than the outside, because the outside is the crispy part, but the inside is just soft and fluffy, what we like to do is we expose that delicious fluffy inside, and then we dip that part into the sugar because the sugar will just cling right onto that yummy inside part of the buñuelo. Yes, there's a whole science to how to eat these. And then you see we just dip that into the sugar and the sugar will cling right onto it. And that's how we eat it. Delicious. We look forward to this year after year. They are so good. And it isn't Passover without our buñuelos. And of course, these little crispy bits are super, super yummy too. Yum. Delicious, crispy, so good. The inside is fluffy and the outside is crispy. It's just perfect, and it's just such a delicious, delicious thing to eat on Passover. And as I said earlier, it's not a Seder without these. We just need our delicious buñuelos. Delicious. Matzah fritters like you've never tried. So good. Wow. Delicious. You are really, really going to enjoy these. They are like nothing you've ever tried, and they are a staple in our home for every Passover, and they will become a staple in your home too once you experience them. They are great. So how incredible and yummy and fluffy do these look? They are so delicious. Really, they are so tasty, and considering they're made out of matzah and they're for Passover, you'd be surprised at just how light and airy and fluffy they turn out. And of course, dipping them into that sugar makes them even more incredible. You are going to love this recipe. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share away. Please share this video with your friends. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on all of my future recipes that I have planned. And if you're not already following Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. See you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.